Hi, it's David at From His Hand Firewood. It's kind of a cloudy, rainy day here in November. Still pretty warm, but I think today is the last warm day of the fall. It's going to get colder next week. So what do you do on a rainy day? Well, one of the things you can do is you can sharpen your chain and get your tools ready for the next time you're going to be using them. You know, for years and years I've been trying to master the art of sharpening my chain for my chainsaw, and I've just gone through a lot of trial and error and haven't really gotten it down to the fact where I've been satisfied with it. But just in recent months, I'd say I'm at the point where I'm actually happy with the end result. And to me, the way that you can tell that you're doing an okay job is when a new chain out of the box no longer feels a lot different than what you were using before. I know in the past when I would get a new chain, it would just cut so much cleaner and better than the chains that I had been sharpening myself, but that's really no longer the case. So I must be doing something a little bit right. Let me talk about some of the things I haven't done well over the years, and maybe you can relate to some of these. First of all, I've learned that you need to have a very stable bar. So you can see here I've got it put on this vise that holds it nice and steady. It's not going anywhere, and that actually allows me to use both hands in the process of sharpening the chain. I used to just kind of hold the bar like this, and then I'd use one hand, and that just was not nearly as effective. So that's one thing. Another thing was I didn't actually realize this before, that you only go in one direction with the file. Believe it or not, I used to go both ways, and that was a mistake. It wears out your files. It just doesn't. It's not how the file has been designed to work. So you want to go just one way forward with the file. Also, I used to have a Chicago Electric rotary sharpener that was electric, and that I never got real good results from that. First of all, you really have not a lot of control, and sometimes it takes out too much of what you call the gullet down there, and also it really heats up the cutting tooth, which can weaken it. There's this process called annealing, and that is just when a piece of metal gets heated up too much, and it can weaken it. If you throw a nail in a fire, for example, and then you try to bang that nail later, you'll notice that it bends because it's been weakened. So I got rid of that. That just was not doing it. Another mistake was not using gloves. We've probably all done that at times, and when the file slips, and it will slip at times, you know, this is pretty sharp, so you want to be careful to protect your fingers. So these gloves are from one of my best friends that I've known since I was 5 years old, which is over 50 years ago. And he gave these to me. They're very, very nice gloves. Gave me a pair last year, and I'm like, Tom, these are the best gloves I've ever had. And he just gave me a pair of new gloves. So this is the first time I've actually used them. All right, what I do is, as I said, you work with your vise. This particular vise is not a really large vise, but it's the one that I have, and so I needed to kind of play around with it a little bit by lifting up the chainsaw, and then also putting this piece of wood behind it, just so that the chain will roll freely. But this is very solid, and it's not going anywhere. You also want to have your chain fairly tight so that you're not going back and forth all the way. What I do is I put a mark on the cutting tooth that I start with. That way I know how far I need to go, and I stop when I get back to the cutting tooth. As I do the entire length of the chain going one direction, just keep moving this, then I'll go to the other side and do the entire length of the chain with the opposite facing cutters. So I will start here with this. Let me give you the anatomy of a chain on a chainsaw first of all. Here you have what's called the cutting tooth or the cutter. This edge on the top is called the top edge. This would be the front corner, which is a very important part of effective cutting. In here, this sort of half moon round shape is called the gullet, and you need to make sure that you are sharpening that properly. And then between the cutting teeth is what's called a depth gauge, also known as a raker. So, and then you've got, you know, the lengths underneath and all that. But in terms of sharpening, that's really all you need to know. I like to use both hands when doing this. It gives me more control over the file, and I'm able to do exactly what I want to do without having to worry about holding the chain or the chainsaw or the bar or anything like that. So again, you only want to go in one direction. The other important thing is, what angle do you go at? I actually, over the life of the chain, have found that it's better to have, for me anyway, a more pronounced angle than even what the gauge says, and that it will actually cut a little bit better. If you want a chain that's going to last longer, you're going to want to have a little bit less of an angle. For me, and I know a lot of people that are using chainsaws and cutting quite a bit of wood, I would rather sacrifice a little bit of the life of the chain for effectiveness of cutting. So I'd rather have it cut. So what I do, you want to obviously start like this. As it comes through, I will grab this side with my right hand and I'll just pull it through. And you can just feel how nice it is going through like that. And I'll apply a little bit of upward pressure, particularly on this this point, okay? The front point, because that's a very, very important part of the cutter. So sometimes on the last swipe through, I'll put a little bit more upward pressure. Sometimes that'll happen. It'll pull you off, but that's okay. And that should be it. 3 or 4 times through should be completely sufficient. And I'll just go right through it, and you know, over time you can get much quicker at it. That's all there is. That's sharpers a you know, a very razor blade, basically. And as you're doing this, you can see, you can't see it, I'm sure, in the video, but you can see these small little filings coming off. That means you are taking off what you need to and making it nice and sharp. But see this, you can see the angle here, that's a very, you know, pronounced angle. It just helps to cut better because you have this really, really sharp point here. You want to make sure you get your gullet properly, but you also want to get this top edge of the cutter to make sure that both the gullet, the point, and the top edge are all sharp, like a razor blade. I would recommend that you buy your files in bulk. You don't want to be buying 1 or 2 or 3 files at a time. You want to buy them in bulk, maybe 20 or maybe even more, and you'll get a much better deal. By doing it that way. It's a shorter one. So you can see it really doesn't take all that long. And this is a 24-inch bar, and I can get through it pretty quickly. Just slight upward pressure with the right hand. And just see how I don't have to worry about this chain going anywhere. It is stable because of the vise. You also could lock it down if you need to, but I haven't found that that needs to be done in most cases. All right, so I'm already done. I'm already done with that side. Now I'll flip over to the other side. And this is my zone right here where I'm comfortable. I've got my workbench. So I've got a little bit of a different grabbing, style here where my left hand now is the guide. So the right hand is the one that's pushing the file through. The left one is guiding it. So it's a little bit different, but you can see I've still got that steep angle. And I'm just pressing it right up against this point, this front edge of the cutter. I used to take chains in to be sharpened by, not sure what they would use, but to be honest with you, an old-fashioned file does a better job, in my opinion, than any grinding wheel or anything else, or Dremel or anything like that. Picking up my pace, but I'm still getting everything down that I want to get done. Still applying that slight upward pressure. And I'm done. Now, I'm not actually done. I'm done with the cutters. The next thing you want to do is, I don't use my gloves for this, but you want to make sure that your rakers are at the right height. So the depth gauge, this is a simple tool that I use for that. You basically just put it on top of the cutters, and then you will see if there's any part of the raker that is sticking up above the surface here, then you need to grind that raker down just a little bit with another file. In this case, I'm not seeing that I need to take anything down. If I did need to take something down, I'll usually note that, and then I will take this off, and I will actually just give it 2 or 3. And the reason I don't use the gauge is because you might be just filing the gauge, and that's obviously not going to do you any good. But you need to make sure that these rakers or depth gauge is at the right height so that your cutter is going to grab a hold of the wood. You don't want to go too deep on these because it'll make for a dangerous situation where you're grabbing too much wood. The chain's going to bind up, and it might even kick back on you, so you want to be very careful with that. Some people use safety glasses when they're sharpening. If I was using a tool like a grinder or a Dremel or something like that, I would have safety glasses, but for what I'm doing with a file, I don't see that as being necessary. So hopefully that has been helpful to you. I'm sure I'm missing some things, but that is what has worked for me after many years of trying to have a nice sharp chain, so that when you're not frustrated when you are cutting your wood. So thanks for watching. I hope this has been helpful. Have a wonderful day.